So we are here this morning to talk about conversations with more than human voices. And we heard in that fantastic opening ceremony many different ways that people are going about that. And we have a wonderful panel here now to talk about some of the very specific ways that they're doing it too. So we have Monica Gagliano behind us. And also in front of us, coming in from Australia. She is an associate, hi Monica, she's an associate research professor in evolutionary ecology. She's a pioneer in the field of plant communication, showing in the laboratory that plants have perception, learning, and memory. So that was a real first from Monica. We have the wonderful Jon Young, who is an animal communicator, a master tracker who trained under Tom Brown Jr. You will probably know his book, What the Robin Knows, and also from his work as a pioneer of the whole nature connection movement. So we're thrilled to have Jon with us today. Also relatively, came off the plane not so long ago. So thank you, Jon, for coming. We've got Patrick Macmanaway, who was trained as a medical doctor, but he's also a third-generation intuitive who communicates directly with the subtle realms of the land and works with farms around the world to bring land and its inhabitants, whether they're human or non-human, into balance. And finally, we have Andrea Catalina Falcon, who's a Peruvian-born, Quechua-rooted ritualist, among many other wonderful things, working with indigenous knowledge as part of a process of renewal and healing for the future and the evolution of human consciousness. She works particularly with the sacred plant cacao, so I'm hoping you'll talk a bit about that, Andrea, as we go along. So I have my notes, and our first question for this panel is, what does listening to the land really mean then? So we've talked a little bit about it in the opening, but I'd love to hear from our panelists today what that means. And Andrea, maybe I could start with you actually. So listening to the land, what does it mean and how do you go about that?
I would say it means many different things. For me, it comes down to also the definition of listening, which is something that it's been already spoken earlier today. What does listening mean? Is it just listening to sound, or is it like a multi-sensorial form of listening with also our bodies, our sensations, even smells? So for me, it's multi-sensory, and even in senses that are not commonly defined in modern science, but that from indigenous ways we can tap into, like from my tradition, my lineage. I would say we listen to the land when we care for the land. We listen to the land when we give something to the land. We are very known for our earth offerings, and the earth offerings are the ways in which we communicate. And we know that when we give to the land will communicate back to us in many different ways. So I would say listening is a form of a relationship that looks different for everybody.
Okay, brilliant, thank you. Jon, I'll come over to you because I can hear you agreeing beside me. How does it look for you?
Listening to the land, I think is something that every creature that moves, probably the ones that are rooted as well, share with us. And it's something that people have always done, and it's only the last couple thousand years, and mostly in the Western world, that we've forgotten that we do that, right? It's as normal as breathing. We're born listening to the land, we're born communicating with it, and knowing in a way that we don't know how we know, especially in modern times, because we're always trying to rationalize or find an explanation. But the realm of listening for me is a realm of wordlessness. It doesn't have thought. It's a place that comes from deep within the body, and sometimes I don't even know my body's listening because my mind is playing tricks the whole time, right? But really something that is so inborn, and it's so easy to bring to the surface. So I could say more, but I'll stop there, give room to Patrick.
Yeah. Well, first, Monica, if I could come to you. So obviously, as a site, you came to this through science, really. So, yeah, could you tell a little bit about your story of listening in a different way then?
Well, hello, first of all. I'm on Noongar country, which is Western Australia, Perth. And I would echo a little bit what Andrea was mentioning at the beginning, that, there are so many ways, and we are always often focusing on like just a handful of ways. But fundamentally, I think that the commonality of those ways, whichever ways those are for you, is that the body is the fundamental instrument. And like any instrument, it can be tuned and attuned to what is required to do. And so it's not so much for me that we have forgotten how to do it. It's more like that the instrument is out of tune. It's like a musical instrument that hasn't been tuned properly, so it can't play music right. But tuning is possible, and it can be learned. It can be someone else maybe can show you how. And so I think that's a very optimistic approach to the listening, because one of the things that I often heard throughout my work is being like, so there must be something that someone is special and is doing that because they're special, or because you know the science, or because you understand this. And it's like, no, I think if you got a body, you pretty much qualify. And then it's a matter of like, fine-tuning the instrument. But you got the instrument already, so that's the hard part. And we're lucky in that way. So,
yeah, brilliant. Thank you, Monica. And I'll come to you, Patrick, then, because talking about fine tuning, I sense that you are quite a finely tuned instrument. It feels like you have been doing this all your life. You grew up in a family where listening to the land was kind of what was happening. So, how does it feel to you, this listening to the land in a kind of, from your position?
Yeah, thank you, Rachel, and good morning, everybody. Everything that these guys said, basically. I think we're clearly all very much in the same path. And just a few comments, Rachel. First, although this is framed as listening to the land, this is actually a conversation. And as has already been said, this is not something that we can switch. It's not something that we can switch on or off. This is open channel 24/7 for the whole of your life. And the land is listening to us. And the land can hear us. And the arrangement that we have as human beings with free will is that we're met. And so it's not a singular communication. We're not just listening, we're being heard. And we need to bear that very, very closely in mind, that we cannot avoid manifesting our intentions and our consciousness. And we are a potent creative agent in landscape. And so it matters tremendously how we hold that relationship, that it is in fact, as has been spoken of, sacred and reciprocal and deeply, deeply reverential. In terms of how does it happen, again, has been said, there's as many different ways to do it as there are people. Broadly speaking, though, traditionally, there's a spectrum which goes from out-of-body practices where we induce trance either through fasting or through drumming or through breath work or through using trance-inducing medicinal plants. Santa Claus is that. Amanita muscaria takes him out of body into the upper world where he travels with companion guardian spirits. The reindeer in that culture, 8 of them, around the wheel of the year, and then back bringing that gifts of communication into the community there. So there's out-of-body practices, and then there are light trance techniques, telepathic techniques, meditative techniques, which are common and which I'm sure we'll have a lot of. And within that, historically, we talk about clairsentience, which is the feeling in the body, the clairaudience, which is the hearing, the clairvoyance, the inner vision, and the claircognizance, which is simply an established knowing, because we are part of the system, and by holding communication, we simply have the knowing. And then at the other end of the spectrum, there are techniques where we stay very much in our thinking mind, but use tools such as dowsing rods or pendulums or tarot cards or I Ching or runes. And so there's a spectrum of out-of-body, integrated with body, without body, and then fully embodied techniques. And so whoever you are and wherever your comfort zone is, there's always a way for us to engage with that.
And I'm guessing everybody in the room will be on that spectrum somehow. Is it
We're
something?
all on the spectrum, right?
Yeah, we're all on the spectrum. Fantastic. So, John, maybe you know, so you're an animal communicator and you were trained, maybe not. Would you like to talk about kind of your experience of this? And so where on Patrick's spectrum do you come, and did it come naturally? You know, was it a natural thing that kind of you then followed a way of kind of training in it, or how did that happen?
Okay, so I'll go back to when I was 15, because I think it could have come earlier, but I wasn't aware of it until when I was 15. And I had this amazing mentor, Tom Brown Jr., who I met when I was 10 years old. And he was looking for someone to mentor the way that his elder had mentored him. And this culture was deeply embedded in tracking, wildlife tracking, but much more than that. Being able to read, for instance, into a footprint, the health of the being that you're tracking. So you could look at a single footprint and know the person's kidney was off, for instance, right? None of this I knew when I was 15. But I was a very rational little guy. I was super scientific, and everything had to have a clear explanation. It had to be in the book because I was a naturalist and studying nature since I was very young. And Tom had been mentoring me for 5 years, and there was one day where I saw a track on the ground, and at this point I knew all the tracks of all the animals of where I was growing up. And I kept seeing this funny thing. It was like two bent claws scratching the ground every 22 inches. I measured it and like, what is this? What is the explanation for this? And I would see it around my place where I went every day to sit in the forest and just observe and be part of it. And then I wandered around other places going fishing, and then I'd see those same patterns on the ground, and I sketched them and I measured them and I looked in the tracking book, and there wasn't any resources in 1975 that you could go online and do things. And even if I did go online, it wouldn't have helped. And I'm like, Tom, I don't know what this is. And I showed him the picture in my notebook, and I said, I don't understand what this is, and I can't figure it out. I tried everything. He said, what did you try? And I told him all the things I did in the research, and he said, so you've tried everything physically? And I said, yeah. And he said, do you really want to know? And I'm like, I really want to know. And you had to say, I really want to know. You couldn't just say, I'm intellectually curious. It had to be like this, okay? All my body. And he said, well, have you thought about asking the track? And I looked at him like, what are you talking about, ask the track? I said, go down there, ask the track, and then let it go. And just let it go. And then when you think you're going to your fishing hole, go towards your fishing hole, not to it. And on your way, pay attention to your body. And if you suddenly get the urge to turn right, even though you knew you were going straight, listen. And I just looked at him like, oh, another playing a trick on me kind of thing, you know, like I didn't believe this could have any reality whatsoever. There was no reason for that to work, as far as I was concerned, okay? So one day I grabbed this little container and I'm going to the neighbor's pond to catch tadpoles. And I have a very clear purpose. I only have so much time, and I grab my little container and I start heading for the neighbor's pond. And I cut through the first neighbor's backyard, and I'm cutting through the second neighbor's backyard when suddenly I get this urge to turn right. And I have no reason to go there. I've never even gone right in this neighbor's backyard. I know there's a creek down there, but I don't know anything else. So I remembered what he said, and I turned right. And I start going down this little trail, and there, of course, on the ground are these 2 scratch marks every 22 inches. And as I go down the hill, the hard-panned soil gives way to the soft mud along the creek. And then I see the other footprints that go with the 2 scratch marks, and it's a raccoon. And one of its feet had been crushed in a trap. And that's why it was making those 2 scratch marks. And I was amazed. And I literally went back, ran down to Tom's house and told him the whole story. And he said, what do you think of that? I'm like, what an amazing coincidence. So here's why I think I was doing this before I was aware of it, because he said, you've been saying that a lot lately. But I wasn't aware that I had been saying it a lot, right? So there's like this unconscious competence, and then there's conscious incompetence that you're facing here, right? And he said, John, when the 99th coincidence turns 100, will you still call it a coincidence? And I said, probably. He said, do me a favor, get yourself a notebook, write coincidence journal on it, in quotes, and when you get to 100, find me and let's talk about it. And it only took 2 years to fill it up to 100. And I went and I talked to him about it, and he was surprised to see me. He was running, his school had opened since then, and he was now had this lecture, and he was coming out of the lecture, and he said, what are you doing here? Because I lived 45 minutes away. He said, what are you doing here? I said, the 99th coincidence turned 100, and I had my notebook in my hand. And he says, what are you talking about? And then he looks, he says, you did that? And I said, of course I did it. I had to prove you wrong, remember? He said, well, what did you find out? And I said, well, I filled it up. He said, I want you to go sit down and look through the whole thing and tell me what they all have in common. And so I did that, and it's pretty simple. You have to really want to know. It's not intellectual curiosity. There's a difference between that and what comes up from the core of your being, the instrument that Monica was talking about. Tuning the instrument is finding that place within you that really needs to know. And for a purpose greater than self, really. It can't just be to satisfy your own ego. It has to be something bigger. And this conference, everything we're here gathered is about something greater than self. Wouldn't you agree? Like, we need to learn this again because this is our birthright, right? Ask the question, let go, trust what your body tells you, and you'll end up in the right place at the right time, but not on your timeline. It's never up to me. I always find myself in the right place at the right time. And this is what we call intuitive tracking, or calling it animal communication. You could call it a lot of different things. But that's how I learned it.
So would you say intuition is the kind of force or the field or the power that kind of is driving our multi-sensorial kind of perception?
I think depending on how it's defined, I would say it has to be intuition, right? But there's different schools of thought around these things. But I just land in the place where we're born to do this. We have it. It's just part of who we are, you know? I love Monica's way of saying it, tuning the instrument, you know? Yeah.
Brilliant, thanks, John. So, Andrea, so you come from a kind of indigenous tradition that probably wonders why those of us who are much more distant from our own land-based traditions are struggling so hard with this. You know, do you have a sense that this is, I mean, is this kind of normal? I don't know what I mean by normal, but is this what your tradition kind of holds close from the beginning?
I would say the answer to that question is very complex. Because, well, first of all, now I'm very connected to my tradition, but I had to fight a lot to get to that place.
Yeah.
I would say that there's not such a thing as a unified tradition here in my country, and I think globally. I think traditions have been attacked, colonized, tried to banish. In my case, literally tried to like be beaten up out of my body or with medication and other forms of like systemic violence. This is what moved me into starting speaking about this. I heard our sister earlier talking about how now it is safe to come and talk about these things, how we don't need to hide it anymore. So for me, I would say depends. There's some, I travel a lot within indigenous communities deep in Peru, and I see for many of them the precarity of the living conditions still pushes them to forget. So then it is not present. They're not wondering, they don't have the privilege to wonder about this. They're wondering how they're gonna eat the next day. Yeah. But for the ones that were lucky enough to be able to fight this violence that tried to erase us, I would say it is the normal. Animism is everywhere. Everything's alive. You wake up and you're like, oh, thank you, Apus, and you give the names to the Apus and to the lakes, and we do our offerings every day. And every time we eat something, it's like we say thank you to the food. It is our normal. Once I was called by the land of my parents, literally by the mountains, to go and touch it. And in the beginning, I thought I was crazy until I started finding more and more people talking about it. But for me, it was a very lonely journey. It was, and it was the land who started teaching me how to listen to it, not with my ear. It was not verbal. It was a somatic. It was an interoceptive type of communication or cognition being awakened inside my body. And when I've been sharing this more and more, I see that a lot of people actually in our tradition talk to the land, but it's through body sensations, and in our case, it's a lot through the food.
Right.
And that is the intersection why I'm here, and I ended up going more to food systems events, because it is through the food, not so much the plant medicines that were mentioned or the like psychedelic experiences, which we have a lot. We're known for in Peru, ayahuasca and other plants are big, but like we can talk with the potatoes and with the corn and with the cacao and with the chilies, and like they hold enormous amounts of information. So more and more it is being out of the closet that it is our normal, but there's still, I think, some way to go to really overcome this still ongoing shame.
Yes, yeah. Could you talk a little bit about cacao then? So you work quite intensely with cacao.
Yes, it's been my focus on what brought me here. So part of my conversations with the land because I experienced two big moments in my life where cacao healed me. This came after traditional, the best medicine available in my country couldn't help me with my birth process. In the beginning of when I was a teenager, I had my first daughter, and the sister, we were in the best clinic, they couldn't help us, so an indigenous nurse from a public hospital sent me to drink cacao. And since then, I was wondering how come a food can help me more than this super fancy medicine and technology? So slowly I started, this was 19 years ago. So slowly I started finding the way. Mine came through talking with land through clay, literally clay that is made by soil from different parts of where my mother's mother came from. And the clay showed me to do shapes, and and when making cacao shapes and working with the symbol of cacao, I started finding a lot of archaeological remains in books and museums of cacao connected to maternity, which was what got me sick. And I said, okay, I should keep listening, like feeling them, and it started giving me somatic sensations on like, okay, go here, go there, do this, do that. And some of them were like, just give cacao to people. Like just whenever you can, for free, just give it to people. And I gave cacao to people all the way from the Sacred Valley to the Swiss Alps in a little cottage where I moved 3 years ago. And I had people coming from different parts of the world to drink cacao with me in the Alps. And we would go walking, and I said like, I think the Alps want to talk with me and tell me it's sad. And I think cacao is allowing me to talk with the Alps. Oh my God. So it just kept doing that, and all the way to World Economic Forum, and all the way to Climate Week. And it keeps saying like, don't get tired telling people what I'm telling you. You just give me, because cacao is land, is memories, just give me to the people and let the people remember how they can all talk to me.
Yeah, wow. I love this idea of kind of plants as teachers almost, or intermediaries. That sounds really...
Like interfaces.
Right, yeah. Monica, can I come to you about that? So Monica wrote a gorgeous book. It's one of my favourite books that I read last year, called Thus Spoke the Plant, kind of looking at her scientific work, but also some of the inspiration that came for that scientific work by working with plants in the Amazon. So could you tell us a bit more about that, Monica, and kind of how you came to that realization?
Sure. I just want to clarify that they're not just plants from the Amazon. I want to really break this romanticizing that the Amazon is the one that holds the solution.
Yeah.
I mean, the Amazon has a lot of plants, and yes, but because of that, our little colonial habits is actually causing a lot of trouble right now. Colonialism is not something from the past, it's something that we are doing right now, especially with plants like the ayahuasca and cacao. I work a lot in Peru with indigenous people there. And I know that the price of the cacao now is going up and is worth more to the cocalero than the coca that they then sell to do cocaine. So they are culling the Amazon, the forest, so that they can plant more cacao trees because of our demands. And the same happens with ayahuasca, the same happens with all of the potent plants, special plants. The thing is that I totally agree with you, Andrea, is that these plants are very amazing, but all plants are, like, and not just the plants, but anything that is here, it's a channel that is open, or an opportunity, not a channel. It's an opportunity for us to open to the very thing that we are looking for, which is the self. So I think it's important to underline that all of these practices can be easily consumed and digested by a system which is totally in place and very healthy, that it wants to colonize and consume everything. So it's even more of a responsibility today than ever before. Yes, that we have access to these amazing interfaces, as you call them, but also, like, as Patrick mentioned at the beginning as well, is like there are relationships and they should be treated as such. So you don't abuse them, because abusive relationships are not what we want to build for the future, or at least I hope so. I hope that most of us would agree that that's not what we want to build. So I just wanted to clarify that, because a lot of people think that, like, oh yeah, she just drinks ayahuasca, she just drinks cacao, and then she has these crazy trips. And then from there, she makes up this stuff, but this is no longer science, because how do you do science like that? And what I think is important to understand is that I don't need to drink anything at all. Nobody does. Anything of these special things. I can just drink water. And as Andrea was saying, is like you can just take any of the food that you're taking in every day. And that is your opportunity for a conversation, for an opening. And so suddenly I think he opens the idea of like listening and entering in relationship with the land to a different level. It's not so much like what did that patch told you or that mountain because it's special told you, but it's like everything it's here is special. Everything has the opportunity to share something very special in that moment for you. And everything is a turning point. And again, to me, it's just a matter like how tuned is your instrument and how willing are you to relinquish control? Control that you know what it is that you need to do at every single moment. So then if I come to science, which is the quintessential practice of control, we control, possible disturbances so that we have a clean, good result. And it's a method, and that's how it works. And it's fantastic. He's able to see things that are really cool. And so not demonizing science, at least I should clarify modern Western model of science, but also expanding it, because all of this that we're talking about is science. Science is about, first of all, awe, and that, as Jon would say, like, is not just, oh, I'm interested in noise. Like, no, if I think about my colleagues and myself, when we start our journey into becoming scientists, we're driven by, first, most of us, if we are biological scientists, we are in love with some kind of natural aspect, animals, plants, nature in general. And so there is love in the cauldron that is cooking this recipe. And then there is this like a yearning, which is, I think, what you were saying before, like these bodies, like, I don't just want to know, I need to know, I can't help it. It's almost a yearning for something more, that it will feel like, then I will be fuller, I will be more myself. And it's true, you will be, because you will be recalling in or remembering a part that it's you, that is just externalized. So I think the call for science, at least from my perspective, is that, we got many different models of science, and the Western model, the modern science model, which is also not always, but often, and it has a history of being very close to colonial approaches, is the one that needs some revision from that perspective. And I think the revision is about expanding not what it does, but expanding how knowledge is created and what counts as knowledge. And then at that point, scientific, Western model, indigenous way of knowing, they're all science. They're all ways in which we are interacting with the world, and in particular with natural aspects of the world, which is the world, to know who we are better. Because that's what they're doing. All my interaction with plants, whether they taught me how to do a little experiment, or whether they told me off because I wasn't behaving properly, or nurtured me because I needed support, at the end, it comes down always to the same point. It's like, I'm just showing you. Are you ready to let go of the identity that was given to you and needs to be soft, firm? And then I can show you more of you. And so I think every time that any of us, no matter in which part of the spectrum we are, but anytime any of us releases a little bit of that control and allows the rest to flood in, then we are in relationship, we are in reciprocity, because we're already, okay, I let go of my control is already an act of reciprocity. It means like I'm humble enough to realize that there is more, and I'm prepared to be available and to be of service, which was mentioned before, and to serve as an instrument. Then, what else can you do? Then you can be really of service to this moment, to the ecological necessities of this moment, whether we call them crisis or not. And then again, tuning and responding. So, yeah. Sorry, I rant.
No, that's fine. That's what we're here for. So how would you recommend that we do that then, Monica? I mean, I guess it's going to be different. We've talked so much about the difference for different people, but how could we retune our instrument? How do we release that control? You know, could you give an example of how that's happened for you?
Well, this is kind of cheating because you know a little bit more about me and my recent history. So, but for example, as a scientist, to recognize that maybe the space and the methodology that that are allowed and are available for me to use have become too small. They are not wide enough to really incorporate some of the ideas or the visions that are calling this moment. I made the decision to leave academia. And it's not an easy thing to do for a scientist. First of all, I've got an identity. I am the scientist. So if I'm not in academia, I will not be considered really a scientist anymore. I'm just someone, you know, that does science, but not real science. You need to be in academia to do that. And whether we like it or not, and whether we agree on that or not. And then of course, there are very practical aspects. It's like it's almost like there must be a cost that you're prepared to pay. It's like almost like an offering that you're prepared to give for the process to open. And in my case, giving up my position, so my job, also meant, okay, I don't have an income now. Okay, how am I going to pay my rent? And I do have work to do, the work that I feel I need to do, I've come to do. But without that, how am I going to support myself? And these are very practical, basic needs. And what is being asked here is not like, well, just go rush and find another job, because that is part of the control. It's like, I know that I have a job. It's just that it doesn't fit the expectation of the system that I belong to. And so that's where then control is released and get replaced by trust. And it's trust, I think, that fine-tune, tune the instrument. And trust is not like, okay, now I trust, because I said that many times. And every time it's been like, can you trust a little deeper? And I've been working, you know, with plants for like the past 2 decades in all ways, ceremonially, as a scientist in a very sterile lab in a university, as a person, you know, going and wandering in forests and woodlands and bushes. And yeah, every time when I think like, okay, I got it, there's like, but there is a little bit more control that can be released. There is a little bit of trust, more trust, deeper trust that can be achieved. And so what is the difference? I mean, I could be, if I was a violin, I could be a violin that I could pay, I don't know, $100 and I get the violin. And I would make music and it would be okay. But if I want to be a Stradivari, well, the wood for a Stradivari is selected from a very specific place. It needs to be of a particular quality. It needs to be worked with so much care, intention, dedication, and it's a lot of sacrificing as well. And I'm not like, you know, now we need to go and all be sacrificial martyr. But yeah, it's work. And it requires like your commitment and your willingness to do it. And so I guess it just depends on what instruments you want to be and what instruments does your space really need. And what I found is that the plants in my case, but also the land and animals have always arrived when in those moments when I felt like, I don't know what I'm doing anymore. I don't know. I don't know. Maybe I stuffed up everything here, and maybe I'm like, you know, I'm thinking that I need to do something, but it's not that. And then they always arrive to just make sure that there is that one extra little nudge, extra little feeling, extra little sign, extra little dream that says like, no, no, everything is precisely as it needs to be. So carry on. And so, as you know, I've given up that part of me so that I could be moving on to doing a bigger project, which is what I'm doing at the moment, for which I cannot talk about yet because it's premature. But it's totally just in service. And the instruments that I am is getting fine-tuned all the time, but I'm allowing it. And it's that is the only thing that is required, I think. Are you going to allow this conversation, this relationship to occur? Or are you insisting with whatever excuse to say that it cannot be? And I think this is fundamentally maybe is the question that we all need to ask of our society, of our political system, of everything that we have built. It's like, is this humanity prepared to say, okay, I'm okay, right, I'm going to enter in this relationship for real, and I'm prepared to give in something so that this can seep inside me and change me, because that's what we're afraid, that it's going to change us. And of course it's going to change us. It wants to. We want to. So
great. Thank you, Monica. Patrick, can I come to you? Advice on tuning our instruments, becoming the best violins that we can.
Advice on tuning the instrument. Thank you.
Yes.
I've just been so wrapped up in what everybody
Yes,
else
yes,
has
yes.
been saying. I've lost track of the question. Two things I'd say, and very much echoing what Monica's just shared with us. All of these pathways particularly open in the presence of real and actual need. I think Jon was saying that too. You've got to want to know, not necessarily as a curiosity, but as an imperative need. And in the presence of need, the channels open. My background growing up, my parents opened a school of spiritual healing, divination, and mediumship in 1959 in rural Scotland. And as Rachel referred, there was a family tradition, but my father's gift of healing was discovered aged 19 whilst fighting the rearguard action at Dunkirk, because they had no other resource for looking after wounded people. And then he went across North Africa with Montgomery. They had a trance mediumship session every single night because it was the only way that they could assess what they were in combat with. One of my mentors, Bill Cooper, who learned to dowse in Royal Engineering College, he was experienced, as many other people were, in using dowsing rods to find landmines. So the tradition that I was raised in was not so much one of conscious curiosity, but of absolute imperative. These are the only tools we have to meet the needs of the day. And that got extended to whether the bread was ready to come out of the oven, or whether the quiche was ready, or, whether the dog was going to have puppies that night. But it was always very, very pragmatic of, there's a need to know, these are the tools we have. Intuition, instinct, communication with guiding tutelary spirits of whatever relevant nature. So I'd say that, first of all, is in the presence of real and actual need, the sort of would-be, maybe hopey kind of goes away, because your mind just gets very, very focused, and that's when the instinct kicks in. Similarly, I spend a lot of time in Vermont in the forests there. We have mountain lions, bear, wolves, coyotes. If you wait until you can see one, it's too late. Same with saber-toothed tigers. Your instinct has to be attuned to the presence of potential hazards and predators in the landscape. And knowing that you're in a landscape, particularly a forested one, where there are predators, then you're simply switched on. I'm sure, John, that's your whole life as well. So I'd say that first is when we engage with real need, whatever part of us does this gets switched on and engaged. The other thing I'd just say in terms of the tuning, there's many models of the two parts of our mind, or the two parts of our psyche. We can think left brain, right brain. We can think conscious, subconscious, higher self, body self, lots of ways of categorizing. But specifically, there's a part of ourself that is necessarily introvert, that needs to take care of the physicality of our immediate needs, thirst, hunger, food, shelter. And that part of the mind is analytical and executive and introverted by its nature and by its necessary function. The other part of the mind is observational and connected. And that part of ourselves, I think higher self, soul, mind, body, mind, but the languaging doesn't matter. So there's one part of our mind that is analytical, executive, and quantitative, and material in its concerns. And there's another part of our mind which is observational, qualitative in its thinking, in its awareness, and that part of the mind is the connected mind. Because of the nature of what we call intelligence in Western culture, we have reduced that to being analytical, linear cognitive knowledge. That's the smallest part of our intelligence. Apparently your iPhone works faster than that part of your brain now, so that's not our human superpower. The human superpower is the observational, qualitative mind, and it's through this that literally all inspiration comes. This is where music and art comes from. This is where all our creative genius lies. We used to talk about the muse. So when we're in observational mind, we move into connected mind. So that's definitely one way to tune the body, is in the presence of need, in the presence of the moment. Just as Monica was saying, to let go of the analytical, not to suspend rational, but to move into the observational mode. And you can do that simply by listening to the sounds that you hear, to observing the light moving, to paying attention to the feel of the sunlight or the snow or the wind on the face. So we move into connective space through observational witness. Is a quick, easy way to go. I would just say also, just in conclusion on that, we can train our minds into analytical and we can train our minds into observational. But the grace state, as we would language in historical or esoteric, the zone, which is the elite athletic performance space, or state 5, which is what the mind mirror folks, Jeff Blundell and Maxwell Cade here in Oxford, developed the analysis of beta, alpha, theta, delta mind states in the 1970s. And they looked at yogis and healers and elite athletes. And what they observed was that when they're in their zone of peak performance, they had something called bilateral hemispheric symmetry happening, which meant that beta, alpha, theta, and delta on both sides of the brain were all switched on at once. So it's not that we go into a listening space or into an analytical space. Ideally, we are in it's like a Christmas tree. We've lost our Christmas tree. All the lights are on, from top to bottom, both sides. So there's an art of balance where we're not denying the analysis or consumed by analysis. We're not denying the observation or consumed by the observation. It's it's a dance, it's a balance. But we have to include the observational because that's what creates the connection and rapport.
Wonderful, thank you. I'd love to open to questions in a little while, but if I could just ask you two, what do you feel that we need to do, you know, culturally, individually, you know, what are the, what we're all sat here kind of looking for, you know, ways forward, knowing that we need to be kind of cultivating and tuning ourselves. What do you think can be the take-home message from kind of this?
What Patrick was just saying about that Christmas tree, all lights on. Children quite naturally have that when they're young, especially. And we as adults, we role model them away from it, or we punish them away from it, as you were describing. And the punishment can be called the social norm, right? I just want you to imagine, what if all children were just given full license and full permission to just be that fully right into adulthood? What would happen to our planet? What would happen to the culture of humanity? So we're all complicit in that in some way, shape, or form, right? And if I had a magic wand and I would find a way to, you know, give all of us permission and full ability to connect to that state again, because I think that would change everything really quickly. And it's not hard. I mean, we're all talking about that. It's not rocket science. It's kind of the opposite, actually, where we become the rocket, you know. And, you know, that's what I feel like if I could somehow influence that outcome, I would. And I've been trying really hard my whole life. But, you know, I guess I've made a little bit of progress here and there, but there's nothing that delights me more than to see a human being lit up like the Christmas tree that Patrick just described, you know. And in that full relationship with the earth and all the beings, we'll know exactly what to do if we could do that. You know, I kind of feel like our problem on the planet is it's just kind of stuck here, you know. It's like the mindset of humanity is our problem. And if we could get everyone there, I'd be so happy. Yeah.
And if there's one practice that you would say, this is what I do every day, or I've really seen this work, what would it be?
Whoa, okay, my microphone came on automatically there. The one practice is very much related to what Patrick was just saying as well. When we wake up in the morning, if we take time to really listen, you know, to really listen, I like to say to the quietest sound in all directions, which is a bit of a trick. Listening into the silence around us in a sphere around us puts us into the different brain state and gets us in touch with our intuition. Going into peripheral vision instead of, you know, that the analytical mind is very much switched on when we're focused on something. When we go into our peripheral or wide-angle vision, as it was described to me, it opens up the observational. But you can hold both at the same time, and it's a practice, you know, and this is how I start my day every day. And, you know, then I listen to what comes up, what wants to happen. You know, it's like every day is a quest, you know, in a sense, and I'm just so curious. This intuitive thing that I was describing earlier that leads me to the right place at the right time also tells me when to call a person, or tells me how to solve a particular problem that I can't work out with my head. I just get a picture in my mind suddenly and the answer comes so easily, right? That's our superpower, and it's a wonderful way to live. It just makes every moment an adventure, really, you know? You know, even when to get up to go walk towards the train, like it's all, you know, it's so pragmatic, and I loved how you related it to need. But the need is so great. The need is so beyond the mountain lion and the wolf and the bear. It's now us, you know, what we're going to do to ourselves as a species and to all the other beings. That's where the need is now. It's like, how can we help our people come back to this? It's such a joy to be there. I mean, why wouldn't you want it?
When you say you practice it every morning, I'm really fascinated what that might look like.
It doesn't look like very much, Rachel.
Or inside.
Well, inside, I mean, the silence is so loud, you know. It's a form of meditation, I guess you could say, but sometimes I call it a sense meditation, but what does it look like? I mean, I sit in the quiet. I love to be up before first light. I love to sit in the dark. And then I like to really just feel myself expand out beyond the sphere that I can reach with my hands to, you know, expanding into the land itself and feeling the shift from darkness to daylight and hearing the birds beginning to wake up, you know, and just really tuning into all that. But not thinking about it, you know, but being aware of it, you know, and then welcoming that first bird, that first thrush that shows up in the morning and just being delighted to see it like, oh, hey, good morning, you know, like, you know, that's what it looks like. But if you looked at me doing it, you'd think, what a lazy guy. What's he doing? He's just sitting there drinking his coffee, right?
I'm glad to know that you can drink coffee, though, at the same time.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Good.
Mm-hmm.
That's what Jon Young does every morning, everybody. Andrea, could I ask you the same question? Am I on? What do you think needs to happen then?
Integration. I think that, well, I would give my perspective from, I do have a multidisciplinary background. It's not just the healing part, but like I studied psychology, work in public infrastructure in Peru, and now in fintech as well. So integration is that, okay, we listen to the land, or more than listening to the land, we listen to life itself, and how do we get to concrete action from there? How do we change? So for me, what needs to be done is systemic change. We talked about, when mentioning also the plants, and this is a topic that I will not expand, but because I know we are with time, but like, I do not promote drinking cacao or anything in order to feel. It's just a tool that helps you to open something, but actually I promote the opposite. And systemic change is a change of relational paradigms. We are the way we relate to life, relate to ourselves, relate to the land, relate to everything. That's a relational paradigm that it's like operating in everything. And I think what needs to be done is that all of these beautiful messages and enlightenments and like new intelligence that we're tapping into as we are walking into, because we are now as a collective, as a planet entering a new era, some call it the quantum era, which is the era that allows you to have these complete opposite sensations and perceptions happening simultaneously at the same time. This is what quantum computers are doing, and what actually living systems can do. So how can we translate that into our everyday life, into everyday systems? And I think that we all sit here now with the responsibility to take this information and to say, okay, from my line of work, from my front line, what can I do now? How can I integrate this? And that really, from a somatic perspective, I think that we can call building up evidence that this intelligence actually works, that this intelligence that we're talking to, it's actually applicable, useful. And the more we build up the evidence in our body, in our nervous system, that this is applicable, the more we can, like our bodies, our systems will be more prompt to support ourselves and to continue attuning ourselves to this intelligence and to apply it over and over again. So I think when it comes to doing, I would say this is what needs to be done: integration and application and reinforcement and nervous system or somatic evidence building.
And I'm guessing that's why this is so useful as well, because we can all hear from each other in different ways. It's kind of like an integration in action.
Mm-hmm. add a little sentence that we have in Spanish, which is whenever something is too visionary, sometimes we ask ourselves, how do you eat that? ¿Con qué se come eso? And yeah, and I would love to share also how we say listening to the land in Quechua, Pachamamanto, Yarispa, and how a lot of the integration of this is like integration of how we live, right? How we live, how to relate. And I believe we can all look into our different lineages and traditions and find there's wordings for that. Forms of living for us is the summa causae, and I would love to hear more ancestral languages, because I don't know in modern languages you have a wording for that, but for us it's so felt that there's like the good way of life includes all of this intelligence that we just talked about.
Yeah, wow. Thank you, thank you. I'd love to open it up for questions. We've got about 20 minutes, something like that. Do we have any questions for anybody out there? One right at the back, Charlotte, is it? Back there? Yeah. Mike. Do you want to pop up, Charlotte? And then you can hand it around.
Yeah. Oh, thank you so much.
Yes.
Yeah, no, thank you. The session's about communicating, and I think some of you said it's a two-way thing. And I remember last year, Patrick, in the Listening to the Land Day, you had said something that really struck a chord with me. It's the land is listening to us. And what do you think, and responds to what we say or think? And what do you think happens when all the land hears about is climate disruption and destruction and fear? And wow, I thought how much our mindsets, as you were saying, Jon, influence also the climate, the world. It actually inspired a session we're doing this afternoon on changing our inner climate in service of life, or I'd be tempted to say now, attuning our instrument in service of life. But I would love to hear more from the panel about that other line of communication, us with the natural world, and what happens in that two-way communication. Thank you.
Do you want to start? Do you want to start that, Patrick? And we'll come over to
Yes. Thank you. And thank you for the session you've organised. I think this is to me one of the most critical awarenesses is that we can see beautiful pictures of Dr. Emoto and the coherence and clarity that arises in water when we bless it, and the incoherence and degradation that happens when we project anxiety and fear. Veda Austin has taken that several steps further now with her projecting images into water. We can see it on the kitchen table. One of the practices that I recommend students and clients is trays of seeds. And one tray of, they're all equally watered and equally sunlighted, but we extremely love and bless one of the trays, and then we ignore another one and we project, I can't do it anymore, but we project grumpiness at another one. And after 10 days, you can just see what happens in terms of shoot and root growth and absolute generated biomass. So in small ways, in very tangible and immediate ways, we can see with Veda Austin's technique, all you need is an iPhone and a freezer. Dr. Emoto was using very high-tech kit, but you can easily experiment to see the effect both of your love and of your ignoring and of your hatred in a small way. And then we amplify that. I get paid to help do landscape communications, and one of the main things always, particularly in the Australian climate, is working with weather. And over 18-month periods and measuring rainfall and rain events, it's very, very clear that we can have direct influences on weather. I've had occasion to work on wildfires in that country, and working with other colleagues, on one occasion we managed to turn back a fire from all 4 sides of a farm right at the boundary. So the land is listening to us, and just as Charlotte was saying, if we project devastating weather, degradation of landscape, species extinction, our agency of free will does manifest that. We should have no question or doubt in our mind. You cannot switch off your manifesting agency as a human being. You are being listened to, you are a manifesting agent. We've been trained to feel small and feel impotent and powerless for many and various and reasons that all of us probably would think is bad, but we have been. We assume that we are the victims of circumstance, whereas in fact the most powerful thing a human being has is their imagination and the potency of our creative intentions. And because of that, the absolute necessity is to stay in a state of grace as much as we can, because it's only in the presence of love and gratitude and reverence and respect that our inevitable manifesting becomes cooperative and synergistic with the ecosystem of which we're a part. I think that probably says it, doesn't it?
Jon, do you want to say something about what impact you think we might be having?
Well, I just want to say thank you for that. Second, everything you just said, brilliant. I mean, I live in a place where, if you actually, yesterday on the headlines as I was traveling, I read in the Bay Area of California, the songbirds are disappearing. And people come to visit Sarah and I where we live. And people who've been living in those mountains for 20 years come to my house and they're like, I'm overstimulated. I've never seen so many birds in these mountains before. Because in these mountains, there's low biodiversity and therefore low numbers of songbirds. But you wouldn't know that if you came to visit me. And I'm not taking credit for it. The birds are breeding. But they feel safe because I celebrate them. You know, they sing to me, I sing to them. And I want them to be abundant, right? I'm like, I'm not listening to this news that the birds are disappearing. They can disappear, but not here. Because I'm going to own, I am manifesting. I am part of this landscape. I have the responsibility to love and care for the beings here. And so we put our heart and soul into that, Sarah and I. And when you come to our house, people say, well, you guys live in a nature movie, you know? There's 7 deer in the yard hanging out, and a coyote comes over and says hello to us, you know? And it's like, no, this is not real. But it is, and we all lived like that forever, you know, until we didn't. But we can do that now. Like I was talking to the blackbird this morning and the pigeons coming over to our feet and the magpies, and I'm just so happy to see them, and I delight and I say hello to them, and they come and they know that feeling. They know that there's somebody who sees them. And I see you, and I'm amazed at all the people who walk so briskly with these grumpy faces. Have you watched the people walk down the streets here? And I just look at their body language, and I'm just like, oh my God, is anyone going to stop and smile? Is anyone going to look at that magpie? Right? Even just this simple act of loving them makes them want to increase, right? And that, you know, applies to the little seedlings. It applies to the oak trees. It applies to the weather. We have a responsibility because the earth is listening to everything. Every thought we have is manifesting. And, you know, keep them joyous and loving and full of gratitude. That's my recommendation.
Thank you. Thank you. Any more questions? Sean, the microphone. Thank you.
Hi. Yes, I'm an earth energy dowser a lot of the time, and it strikes me quite often that we don't look at the built environment enough in terms of the sort of wonder and kind of synchronicities, coincidences that happen. And, my feeling is I've had as wonderful experiences walking down Fleet Street chasing dragons as I have, wandering around Bodmin Moor or Wales. And I wonder, if any of you can speak to how we develop that sense of wonder within the built environment and not just being in the wilds. And, I think so many people do live in towns and cities, and children, that's their main experience, how we can begin to have that sense and the sense of listening, and that is the land as well, that the built environment is the land. And, somewhere like Oxford, I have this, wherever I'm walking around, I have, a real sense of the earth speaking through the buildings and, the people that inhabit it. So, yeah, just wondering about that.
Brilliant. Thank you, Sean. Can I just give that to you, Andrea?
I said I've experienced this also myself. I've lived in rural areas, in the mountain, very deep and isolated, but also had these amazing experiences in vibrant cities like Zurich, New York, and I would share something my Reiki teacher in New York said, I think it was one of these main squares, and he said, one thing is to know how to hold on your practice in the middle where there's no noise, let's say in the mountain, in the countryside, but try to do that. Right now, what we're doing now, there's honking, sirens outside. But when we are doing our Reiki focusing, channeling life force energy there. So some students would complain, and he said to us, if you can just convince yourself or choose to believe that it is possible and just practice, like I said, building the evidence that it is doable, and have that will, and also have that understanding, like you said, there's that build-up structures are also land, like concrete is made of organic stuff too. So I would say that we can just practice, and the more we connect with the life force intelligence, we can also wash off a bit of this trauma and conditioning and beliefs that in some place life is only in the pleasurable places, in the places where we'll feel good. And also this I understand also from our cosmology, because we have an understanding of reality divided in dimensions, and one is the light and the other one is the dark, the Hanapacha and the Ukupacha. And sometimes in the cities it's so stressful that we send that stress into the Ukupacha, meaning that we don't want to deal with it. But reality is a wholeness. So when we embrace the wholeness, we can say, oh wow, this is so uncomfortable in this city, it's dirty, it's messy, it's everything. But in that other polarity of reality, there's also life force, there's also God, there's also that divine energy of creation, it's also there. And I think that if we embrace this truth, then we can tap into this sense of bliss or sense of awakening, even in the darkest or the most uncomfortable situations or moments.
Fantastic. Thank you, Andrea. Quarter past. Have I got time for that? I'm seeing Fran here. Have I got time for one more question? Yeah. There was one very straight arm. There.
Thank you all so much. This is, I think, maybe directed to John, maybe Patrick as well, all of you. We have deer on our land. We grow veg as our main income, and we have woodland that we've planted and an older woodland. And the deer, it's a wonderful wild place. And I love them and I honour them and I revere them. And we eat them sometimes, and when I'm preparing them, I sing to their soul. But when they're coming to eat my vegetables, I have trained, when my kids were young, we trained them to run down the field like a pack of dogs to chase them away. And I felt, when you were saying about you welcoming the coyotes, you know, coming into your yard, I felt this like this conflict of like, how do I keep doing that? And yet I need to chase them away from what is my income and what is feeding other humans. I don't know if you have an answer, but I hope you do.
Yeah, that sounds like one for you, Jon.
Oh, yeah. Well, I'm sure this is a fun question. We have deer, but we put up a fence where we don't want them to go. And we let them know that this is not for them, and that we make sure that we put stuff for them as well, right? And, you know, it's very interesting, like the black-tailed deer in the rut, you know, that is just passed. We're just coming to the end of it now. How the males lock their antlers and fight and bang into each other and all this craziness, and they kick up all this dust. And, you know, the books say that that's what happens. The males don't tolerate each other. But we've come to observe that it doesn't work exactly the way the books say, and that a culture of cooperation seems to be emerging among the deer, which is very interesting to observe. And they all communicate, but they all hear us. So there's no question about it. And it's an ongoing conversation. So, you know, there's this volunteer tomato plant that started growing outside the fence. And it was growing so healthy and so wild as volunteer tomatoes like to do. And there was this one female deer that was coming up to this place, and I thought, oh, I should chase her away so we get some of these tomatoes, right? But then I'm like, no, we have to let her, because this is outside the fence. We told her she could have what's outside the fence. And so I didn't resist that, and she came and she ate some of it, and then the plant sprung back again. And then she came back and ate some more, but this plant became more vibrant and more healthy than the tomatoes that we were cultivating. And then the tomatoes there were so many flowers and tomatoes coming off in between, and there's this dance. But I think it's like we have to be constantly attentive to this conversation and keep reiterating what it is that we want to see. Hummingbirds fight at the bird feeder. You put up a hummingbird feeder, this one male will come, he won't let any other hummingbirds feed. And so you'll just get one hummingbird and other ones trying to get in, you know? And so I said to myself, well, I'm going to put up another hummingbird feeder then, if that's how you're going to be. So I put up a second one on the other side of the house, so he couldn't do both at the same time, right? Well, then a male showed up on the other side. And so now I have two males defending two hummingbird feeders and a whole bunch of hummingbirds wanting to feed. So I said, okay, I'll just keep putting up hummingbird feeders. And so I did. And now at twilight, you'll see maybe 100 hummingbirds at the same time taking turns. There's 5 holes on the base of the feeder, and they're sitting next to each other, taking turns peacefully, right? It's like a cultivation of this sense that we can all do this. There's plenty for everyone kind of feeling. And you don't notice it day by day, minute by minute, but you notice it over time. Just hold the space. Hold the space. We're all going to get along. We're all going to learn to cooperate. And then the does that gave birth to the fawns that now know me on a first name basis, walking around with their antlers, everyone's saying it's so dangerous, don't go out there this time of year because you can get injured. I'm like, no, these are my friends. I've known them since they had spots. You know, they know me. And you'll start to feel this relationship, you know, and they start to listen more and more as we're there. I feel like, you know, we're part of this beautiful extended family, and it just keeps getting more beautiful every year. And it's really we can all do this anywhere, you know, it could happen anywhere. But we have to remember that that's who we are. That's our responsibility as humans, you know, to be in this relationship, to see what's happening around us, to manifest what wants to be, what could be. And I'll end with this thought. The San Bushman ladies, they told me, I was in the Central Kalahari, and the old women said, we really miss it, how the animals used to be part of our family. Like when we'd wake up in the morning, their tracks would be all around our fire. They would come here without fear. But ever since our men started hunting with metal spears and rifles, now we don't see them anymore. You know, they used to hunt with poison arrows, and they would, shoot the animal wouldn't know what hit it, and then it would go off, and then they would track it, and then they would harvest it. But they lost that relationship because of the intensity of the weaponry, right? Used to be that they could live in with the animals they were eating sometimes, and those animals did not see them as enemies, right? So that can change, even among San Bushmen. So just think about our relationship, there is something to saying good morning to the pigeon, even though they're just pigeons. They're not just pigeons. Look at that incredible being, and really see it for what it is. And the built world, man, I have so many stories for you about carpentry and things that come through. I love that this stuff works across the board, and it really does. So, thank you.
Wonderful. That sounds like a great place to finish. Well, first of all, I'd love to thank Monica, who's patiently sat on this huge screen behind us. I don't know if you know how big your screen is, Monica. You're about 20 times bigger than we are, but thank you so much for your wise words on the need to expand science. Thank you so much to Jon and Andrea, who have both flown in the last 24 hours. It's been wonderful to have you both. Thank you, Patrick, who's come down from Scotland. I would just like to highlight that all these people will be speaking or doing workshops again today or in the main conference over the next 2 days. So please catch up with them there. And last of all, thank you, all of you, for coming, to choosing to be with us in this slot, because there are many others you could have been in. So thank you for coming, and look forward to seeing you the rest of the day.